In the years following the conclusion of the Great War, the Republic of Austria entered a prolonged period of economic and social instability. The dismantling of the imperial order, combined with inflation, unemployment, and a shrinking industrial base, altered the conditions of daily life across the country. Vienna, once the administrative center of a multinational empire, remained a large and densely populated city. However, its outward appearance of order concealed widespread material uncertainty. Public institutions continued to function, but many households depended on irregular income, temporary arrangements, or assistance drawn from private sources rather than secure employment. Daily life in these districts followed routines shaped by necessity. Employment was commonly sought through personal acquaintance rather than formal appointment. Meals were taken according to available means, and social contact was generally confined to neighbors and nearby surroundings. For women maintaining households or caring for children without reliable income, the appearance of order and propriety strongly influenced how they were regarded by landlords, employers, and local authorities. Within such conditions, individual households could move rapidly between relative comfort and deprivation. Inheritance, compensation, or charitable contributions might temporarily improve circumstances, only to be followed by renewed difficulty once those resources were exhausted. Martha Merrick was born in Vienna in the late 19th century. By the early decades of the 20th century, she had reached early middle adulthood. The exact year of her birth is not consistently recorded. She was orphaned in childhood, raised in limited circumstances, and entered employment at an early age after only brief formal education. In the years following the First World War, opportunities for women in similar circumstances were narrow. Regular employment was scarce, wages were low, and advancement depended less on skill than on patronage or private connection. Within this environment, Martha entered work in a clothing shop in Vienna, a setting that placed her in contact with customers of greater means and exposed her to standards of living otherwise beyond her reach. During this period, she became acquainted with Moritz Free, an elderly and wealthy department store proprietor. Their association continued over several years. As a result, she left ordinary employment and lived under improved material conditions. Mr. Fridge provided financial support, arranged for her attendance at finishing schools in France and England, and maintained her in accommodation consistent with a higher social position. When Mr. Fridge died in the summer of 1923, he left her the greater part of his estate. This inheritance included a villa in the Vienna woods at Meiling and a substantial sum of money. The following year, Martha married Emil Merrick, a younger man employed as an engineer. The couple lived in a manner consistent with the resources then available to them, but the inherited funds were soon reduced. Inflation, imprudent expenditure, and the absence of steady income placed the household under increasing financial pressure. By the middle of the decade, debts had accumulated. On the 24th day of June in 1925, Martha and Emil Merrick entered into an accident insurance contract on the life of Emil Merrick for a sum reported at approximately £10,000 sterling. The amount insured was considerable in relation to the household's remaining resources, and the agreement was concluded with unusual promptness. The policy followed the standard form and conditions ordinarily applied in accident insurance contracts. On the following day, the 25th of June, Emil Merrick sustained a severe injury while alone at his place of residence. Medical examination recorded the loss of a leg caused by wounds inflicted by a heavy cutting instrument. The injury was reported at the time as accidental in origin. Medical attention was obtained without delay, and the circumstances were conveyed to the insurer as falling within the scope of the policy. From the beginning, the incident attracted attention. Attending physicians noted that the injury consisted of several distinct wounds, a detail that raised questions about how it had occurred. On the basis of these medical reports, representatives of the insurance company conducted a review and declined to approve full payment. This decision was communicated in formal terms, and the claim entered into dispute. The matter proceeded through legal review, during which medical opinions were examined and statements were taken. It was established that a nurse involved in Emil Merrick's treatment had accepted payment to alter or withhold information relevant to the insurance claim. In April 1927, the court rejected the principal charge of insurance fraud but convicted both Martha and Emil Merrick of bribery. Sentences of approximately 4 months' imprisonment were imposed, with credit for time already served. The insurance dispute itself was resolved separately by agreement outside the court, resulting in a payment of roughly 30% of the claimed sum after legal costs. In the years following the conclusion of insurance proceedings, the resources of the Merrick household were gradually exhausted. The family left Austria and resided for a period in Ehlers, where living costs were lower. Efforts to establish a business there proved unsuccessful. During this time, 2 children were born, Ingeborg and Alons. After these attempts failed, the family returned to Vienna under reduced circumstances and occupied a succession of modest dwellings. On the 31st day of July 1932, Emil Merrick was taken ill at the residence then occupied by the family. Those present observed a gradual onset of physical weakness accompanied by difficulty in movement and speech. A physician was summoned and recorded symptoms consistent at that time with pulmonary disease. Emil Merrick died later that day. The death was certified as natural, and no further inquiry was undertaken. In the weeks that followed, the infant daughter, Ingeborg Merrick, was observed to develop symptoms of illness. Later accounts describe progressive weakness and increasing difficulty in swallowing. Despite medical attendance, the child's condition deteriorated, and she died within a short interval after her father. These events were regarded by those around them as misfortunes occurring in close succession. By the year 1934, Martha Merrick was residing with her aunt, Susanna Lervenstein, who had named her sole heir. After a time, the aunt was reported to suffer symptoms similar in character to those previously observed within the Merrick household. Her condition worsened over a period of days, and she died following an illness marked by increasing incapacity. The death was recorded as due to natural causes, and Martha Merrick succeeded to the property in accordance with the will. In the latter part of the decade, around the year 1937, Martha Merrick occupied premises in Vienna that included rooms let to lodgers. One such lodger was Felicitas Kittenberger, a seamstress, whom Martha Merrick persuaded to take out a life insurance policy, naming her as beneficiary. After falling ill following meals prepared within the household, Felicitas Kittenberger died. An insurance payment reported as between $300 and $785 United States dollars was thereafter made to Martha Merrick. During this same period, the younger child, Alons Merrick, was observed to suffer episodes of illness resembling those recorded in the other cases. Unlike the others, he survived following medical intervention. By the latter months of 1937, the circumstances surrounding the death of Felicitas Kittenberger began to attract attention beyond the immediate household. In the weeks preceding her death, she had complained to relatives of recurring illness, which she associated with meals taken at the lodging where she resided. Following her death, however, her adult son reported his suspicions to the authorities, stating that the pattern of illness had appeared both persistent and unusual. At approximately the same period, an inquiry was initiated concerning a claim made by Martha Merrick following an alleged theft of paintings. The items were reported missing, but were later found intact in a rented storage facility. As a result, a charge of attempted insurance fraud was brought, and Martha Merrick was taken into custody. Following her detention, earlier deaths connected with the household were reviewed. Statements from neighbors, former lodgers, and relatives referred to repeated illness after meals prepared within the residence. Medical records, where available, showed similar symptoms, including progressive weakness and difficulty in swallowing. On this basis, the authorities ordered the exhumation of the remains of Emil Merrick, Ingeborg Merrick, Susanna Lervenstein, and Felicitas Kittenberger. Toxicological analysis revealed thallium in each case, consistent with repeated administration. Further inquiry confirmed that thallium-based rodent poison was freely available at the time, and that such preparations had been purchased by Martha Merrick. Evidence also showed that her son, Alon's Merrick, had displayed signs of similar exposure but survived following treatment. Following confirmation of thallium in the exhumed remains, the investigation entered a formal and comprehensive phase. The deaths of Emil Merrick, Ingeborg Merrick, Susanna Lervenstein, and Felicitas Kittenberger were reclassified as matters requiring judicial determination. The medical officers who conducted the examinations reported that thallium had been detected in each body in concentrations incompatible with accidental exposure. The substance was identified as having been administered over a period of time rather than as a single dose. Attention then turned to the acquisition and handling of the poison. Investigators established that thallium-based preparations were commercially available in Vienna during the relevant years, sold primarily for the extermination of rodents. A pharmacist gave evidence that Martha Merrick had purchased such a preparation, identified as Zelio paste, on more than one occasion. Sales records were produced and examined. No requirement existed at that time for the purchaser to state a purpose beyond that ordinarily associated with household use. Statements were taken from individuals who had resided in or frequented the various households occupied by Martha Merrick. Several witnesses recalled episodes of illness occurring after meals prepared by her. In the lodging house where Felicitas Kittenberger resided, it was stated that she had complained of becoming unwell shortly after eating, while improving during periods when she took food elsewhere. These observations were recorded without embellishment and were later compared against medical timelines. The survival of Alon's Merrick formed a separate but related element of the inquiry. Medical records showed that he had exhibited symptoms consistent with thallium exposure, though to a lesser degree. Treatment had been administered before irreversible damage occurred. This circumstance was noted as corroborative of repeated administration within the household. Documentary evidence relating to insurance policies was assembled and reviewed. In each of the fatal cases, Martha Merrick stood to receive financial benefit, whether through insurance proceeds or inheritance. Policies were produced along with records of payments made following the deaths. Wills and probate documents relating to Susanna Lervenstein were likewise entered into the file. The case was formally brought before the court in the spring of 1938. The indictment charged Martha Merrick with 4 counts of murder, each alleged to have been committed by the administration of poison over an extended period. Proceedings were held before the regional court in Vienna. Public interest was considerable, and reports noted the presence of large numbers both within and outside the courtroom. At the opening of the trial, the prosecution set out the sequence of deaths, the medical findings, and the chain of evidence linking them. Expert witnesses were called to explain the properties of thallium and its effects upon the human body. The toxicologists described the analytical methods employed and affirmed the reliability of their conclusions. Pharmacists and insurance representatives gave factual accounts of transactions and payments. Witnesses drawn from neighbors and former lodgers testified to observations of illness, meals, and domestic arrangements. Their statements were confined to what they had seen or heard and were presented without inference. The defense argued that the evidence was indirect and that no witness had observed the administration of poison. It was further stated that the illnesses could have had other causes and that the detection of thallium alone did not prove deliberate poisoning. During the hearings in Vienna in May 1938, Martha Merrick denied all charges and maintained her innocence, rejecting any allegation of poisoning by thallium. She refused repeated suggestions by the prosecution that an admission of guilt might lead to clemency. Throughout the proceedings, she appeared in a debilitated condition, at times claiming an inability to stand or see clearly, and was brought into court with assistance. These matters were noted in the record, but did not affect the conduct of the trial. On the 19th day of May in the year 1938, judgment was delivered. Martha Merrick was found guilty on all 4 counts of murder. The sentence imposed was death. The verdict and sentence were entered into the record in the customary manner, and the accused was removed from the courtroom to await execution. Following the verdict, press attention centered primarily on the legal context in which the sentence had been imposed. Reports noted that the case was concluded after the annexation of Austria into the German Reich in 1938, when capital punishment was reintroduced and applied with greater rigidity. Commentators observed that this marked a departure from earlier Austrian practice, under which women convicted of murder were often spared execution. Some accounts accepted the outcome as a lawful consequence of conviction under the authority then in force, noting that the refusal of clemency reflected the reduced scope for executive discretion following the political changes of that year. Other interpretations were more reserved, pointing out that mitigation might previously have been expected in comparable cases. A limited number of sources referred to Martha Merrick's partial Jewish background as a possible factor in the rejection of petitions for mercy, though this was not advanced as a principal explanation and was absent from the official record. In this way, the case came to be discussed less as an exception based on individual circumstances than as an example of an altered judicial structure. While the sentence remained unchallenged and no appeal was entertained, public commentary continued to frame the matter as reflecting the conditions under which justice was administered rather than the character of the condemned. Following the conclusion of the proceedings, the sentence imposed upon Martha Merrick was carried into effect without alteration. On the morning of the 6th day of December in the year 1938, she was removed from custody and taken to the regional court in Vienna. The execution was conducted by guillotine in accordance with the method prescribed under the authority then in force. Official notices recorded that the procedure was completed in the customary manner and that death was certified shortly thereafter. No public ceremony accompanied the act, and the body was removed in accordance with administrative practice. In the years that followed, the residences associated with the events changed occupants and function. Rooms were let, altered, or vacated as circumstances required. No public marker distinguished these places from other dwellings in the city, and daily life continued in their vicinity without reference to the earlier occurrences. No new evidence emerged to modify the account established at trial. The sequence of deaths, the findings of the medical examinations, and the judgment of the court remained as recorded. As time passed, the matter receded from public discussion and assumed the character of a completed file, resulting in a payment of roughly 30% of the claimed sum after legal costs. In the years following the conclusion of the insurance proceedings, the resources of the Merrick household were gradually exhausted. The family left Austria and resided for a period in Ehlers, where living costs were lower. Efforts to establish a business there proved unsuccessful. During this time, 2 children were born, Ingeborg and Alons. After these attempts failed, the family returned to Vienna under reduced circumstances and occupied a succession of modest dwellings. On the 31st day of July 1932, Emil Merrick was taken ill at the residence then occupied by the family. Those present observed a gradual onset of physical weakness accompanied by difficulty in movement and speech. A physician was summoned and recorded symptoms consistent at that time with pulmonary disease. Emil Merrick died later that day. The death was certified as natural, and no further inquiry was undertaken. In the weeks that followed, the infant daughter, Ingeborg Merrick, was observed to develop symptoms of illness. Later accounts described progressive weakness and increasing difficulty in swallowing. Despite medical attendance, the child's condition deteriorated, and she died within a short interval after her father. These events were regarded by those around them as misfortunes occurring in close succession. By the year 1934, Martha Merrick was residing with her aunt, Susanna Lervenstein, who had named her sole heir. After a time, the aunt was reported to suffer symptoms similar in character to those previously observed within the Merrick household. Her condition worsened over a period of days, and she died following an illness marked by increasing incapacity. The death was recorded as due to natural causes, and Martha Merrick succeeded to the property in accordance with the will. In the latter part of the decade, around the year 1937, Martha Merrick occupied premises in Vienna that included rooms let to lodgers. One such lodger was Felicitas Kittenberger, a seamstress, whom Martha Merrick persuaded to take out a life insurance policy, naming her as beneficiary. After falling ill following meals prepared within the household, Felicitas Kittenberger died. An insurance payment reported as between 300 and 785 United States dollars was thereafter made to Martha Merrick. During this same period, the younger child, Alones Merrick, was observed to suffer episodes of illness resembling those recorded in the other cases. Unlike the others, he survived following medical intervention. By the latter months of 1937, the circumstances surrounding the death of Felicitas Kittenberger began to attract